Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Wynwood Buddhist Temple's virtual Dharma service. As usual, we will begin the service by singing Vandana and Tisarana. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to him, the exalted one, the enlightened one, the supremely awakened one. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, Namanda, Namanda. Please join me in the chanting of the verses reaffirming the vows. This is found on page 117 of the Red Service Book. Namanda, 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 Namanda. Attain Buddhahood, should I not provide to all for countless kalpas to come, aid in times of suffering? May I not attain Buddhahood, I will reach enlightenment, but unless my Buddha name resounds throughout the universe, may I not attain Buddhahood, I will practice the noble path, wisely, mindfully, free of greed, seek to reach the supreme way, be a guide to one and all. May my power shine great light to illumine and dispel the darkness of the three poisons, and save all from suffering. With eyes of wisdom I'll remove the darkness of ignorance. I will close all evil paths, open gates of high highest good. When I attain Buddhahood, light will shine throughout all lands, light brighter than sun and moon, outshining all heavenly lights, giving my virtues to all, not forsaking anyone. I will proclaim the Dharma like the roar of a great lion, bowing before all Buddhas, steadfastly gaining virtues, with wisdom fulfilling my vows. I shall be a guide to all, like the wisdom of my teacher. May my wisdom also shine all throughout the universe and illumine one and all. If I shall fulfill these vows, may all lands tremble with joy. From the heavens wondrous flowers rain down upon all the lands. The virtue of Amida's law is shared equally by all, together attaining awakened mind. We are born in the land of peace. Namandao, 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 namandao. The recitation for today is Taking Refuge in the Three Treasures. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and of love. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness. Namo Amida Butsu.
I want to thank Kailua Hanganji Temple for giving me the opportunity to give today's Dharma talk. As always, it's a privilege. Today's talk is titled, The Dharma of Climate Change. First, I would like to mention these are very auspicious times for our high school seniors here on the island. Despite the isolation of distance learning and the cancellation of standardized testing, our 12th graders have been plugging along, not only with their studies, but applying to colleges as well. Over the past 2 weeks, our students have been getting their acceptance letters from their college applications, each one plotting a trajectory into their futures. In our household, I am very honored to announce Bryn has been accepted to Dartmouth College in New Hampshire, an Ivy League school that could not be further from Kailua, and where she is going to find running around in slippers and shorts all year long will soon be coming to an end. Now, as soon as she told me the news, I told her, "Job well done." And she said, "Thank you, Dad," for which I quickly replied, "I'm not congratulating you, I'm congratulating myself." You see, with the amount of private school payments, schlepping her to sports events, sitting through her symphony practices, and guiding her through the college application process, I feel I deserve an honorary degree from Harvard. Along with feeling proud, I am also awed by this entire high school senior cohort. They are so environmentally conscious. They have taken coursework in environmental sciences, and to listen to these kids talk, you realize these kids aren't just woke about social and environmental issues. They are true warriors about injustice and climate change. These kids are so on it. A few months ago, I was driving my kids to school and was caught at the red light over here by Castle Hospital intersection. You know, it's unusually long, and I just mumbled to myself, "I hate this red light." My kids piped up, "Dad, you're a racist." Well, although joking, my children have taken their causes very seriously. Their engagement on climate change got me thinking about the Buddhist perspective towards global warming. To borrow from our Christian brothers, what would Buddha do? In the 6th century BCE, soon after his enlightenment, Buddha gave his first sermon at Deer Park. There in eastern India, he spoke of the Four Noble Truths to his five disciples. We all know the first noble truth is that of dukkha, or suffering. Here is where we make the connection between Buddhism and climate change. Because this Anthropocene period, the period during which all human activity is the dominant influence on climate and the environment, will be a cause for mass suffering. As we know, the second and third noble truths elaborate on the human relationship with suffering, which is rooted in human desires and activities. Thus, Buddha should be front and center in the fight to save our planet. A quick primer on global warming. The biggest culprit is that of greenhouse gases. These heat-trapping gases, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, allow the sun's shortwave radiating waves to pass through them without being absorbed. However, these same waves bounce off the Earth. They become longer in their frequency and get absorbed by these greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, making our planet much warmer than it otherwise should be. How do we know these gases are making our Earth a hotter place to live? Well, climate scientists have taken deep core samples of air bubbles trapped in ice and are able to look back in time to measure the amount of CO2 gas that was in our atmosphere thousands and thousands of years ago. What we see is atmospheric CO2 usually hung around the 280 parts per million. Then came the Industrial Revolution around the turn of the 19th century. It was at this time that we started digging up fossil fuels to power our newfangled machines, which caused a lot of CO2 to be removed from the ground and put into the sky via emissions. Our current CO2 levels are around 410 parts per million, with approximately half of the total CO2 increase occurring over the past 40 years. Leading scientists agree that these increasing greenhouse gases are the major driver of current climate change rather than natural forces. Yeah, we humans are the cause of our own suffering. The problem with our Earth heating up from these rising greenhouse gases, along with habitat transformation caused by deforestation at the equator, which accounts for about 20% of climate change, has put an unprecedented pressure on our Earth. The result is physical, chemical, and ecological changes that are altering our planet. These changes threaten the biological systems of which life, our health, and our prosperity depend. How's that for suffering? It is important to point out that we are not talking just about future suffering. Many of us are suffering right now. Leading scientific organizations agree that rising temperatures are causing observable changes across a range of indicators. Those include worsening heat waves, shrinking ice sheets, rising sea levels, worsening storms, and severe wildfires, like the ones we see in California. As a physician, I like to focus on climate change and how it affects our health. Let's start with our children, who bear the brunt of our negligent suffering. The American Academy of Pediatrics has stated that global climate change is the leading public health threat to all current and future children. The effect on our children and grandchildren are increased levels of asthma and allergies, increase in waterborne and foodborne diseases, loss of caregiver, disrupted education, displaced populations, and disruption of crop yield, fresh water supply, all of which can lead to unstable social and political landscapes. One of my best buddies, Dr. Bruce Bakar, quit his job as an OB/GYN physician at Kaiser in San Diego to devote his life to fighting climate change. Last year, he published a paper in the Journal of the American Medical Association where he was investigating prenatal exposure to ozone and heat. He demonstrated a statistically significant association between climate change and adverse pregnancy outcomes. Now, although I don't want to go on and on with doom and gloom scenarios of suffering, I do have to mention a study that came out last year stating that 1 million species of animals could face extinction within the next 50 years. That would be 1/3 of all animal species on this planet. Wow. What is a Buddhist to do? Well, to solve a problem, first we must identify where the root of the problem is coming from. Our current crisis is not natural, but man-made, and hence it is worthy of reflection and investigation. We need to make an effort to educate ourselves to understand how the current global energy, political, economic has emerged and how it must be deconstructed so that we can find a more sustainable path. All right, so we reviewed that climate change is a cause of suffering. We also understand that suffering is rooted in human desires. So we make the connection that our desires for wealth, power, material objects, and sensory satisfaction has led to the eventual heating up of our planet, whether we were aware of it or not. More important, however, is our desires have blocked the moral imperative needed to act to mitigate our plight. This goes for nations and economies, as well as multinational corporations. That's right. We are talking about the first poison, greed. Climate change is closely related to our individual, and more so, geopolitical desires for wealth, comfort, and control over our resources. So slow to react or admit the problem of global warming has led to a clear lack of compassion for the suffering of others, and especially our compassion for our Mother Earth. Okay, we've identified some of the basics for the root of the problem. Let's now focus on how to solve the problem. Well, as we all know, the fourth noble truth is the way, where we follow the eightfold path through wisdom, morality, and mindfulness. One thing I have learned from all of you at Haganji is Buddhism is a religion based on action rather than belief. Circling back to Buddha's first sermon, he laid out the way like the spokes on a wheel, all functioning simultaneously to keep the car rolling true. The Eightfold Path is actually a three-wheeled car, where all wheels need to be functioning in unison. The wheels are wisdom, made up of the spokes of right view and right thought, the wheel of meditation, made up of mindfulness and concentration, and the wheel of morality made of the spokes of right speech, work, effort, and right action. And now is the time for action. The action we must all agree to is both personal and policy-driven to combat climate change. On the personal action side, my climate warrior children have put their money where their mouths are, at the dinner table. Now, I love to barbecue. However, my kids remind me how raising cattle is a major contributor of greenhouse gases. Apparently, cows put out an enormous amount of methane, causing almost 10% of greenhouse gas emissions. That is a lot of passing gas. So now my kids want to eat vegetarian. And I don't care who I offend, but tofu is tasteless matter. More environmentally annoying, milk has become the new gastronomic villain. Instead of a gallon of cow's milk, my children insist I purchase one of each: soy milk, oat milk, almond milk, and cashew milk. Good on my cornflakes? I think not. For personal action, one does not have to become carbon neutral. The point being, we must all do something to guard against climate change. If we all do a little, it becomes a lot. What do? I try to think about my mother at least once every day. That is Mother Earth. Here's a list of personal steps we can each take to help us along our climate control path. 1, power our homes with renewable energy, like solar power. 2, buy better light bulbs. LED bulbs use 80% less energy than incandescent bulbs. 3, start thinking about purchasing an electric or hybrid car. And 4, in Kailua, get on your bike and walk to these markets. They're so close. My children have definitely done this by adopting the 3 R's of reduce, reuse, and recycle. I know around our house I have to walk on eggshells near the trash bin because I am concerned that I might get caught throwing something away that could be repurposed. We as individuals can also act by contacting and supporting our state and federal legislators to drive policy, because ultimately is the political will that will be needed to set policy to put climate at the center of our economic plans. Nations will need to influence multinational corporations to invest and adopt the necessary reductions in emissions to halt this crisis. So, what would Buddha do? He would advocate for all of us to take action to keep the carbon in the ground. Policy action. Well, in the U.S., we need to win back climate credibility in the world. The first climate change treaty, the Kyoto Protocol, was an international treaty signed in 1997 under Bill Clinton, which created a framework for nations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. President George W. Bush pulled out of that treaty in 2001, doing a 180-degree flip-flop on our commitment to global warming. President Obama in 2016 adopted the Paris Agreement as a legally binding international treaty on climate change. More than 190 countries adopted this ambitious climate change agreement to limit global warming. In June 2017, Donald Trump reversed course yet again and pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement. As the number 2 greenhouse emitter in the world, the U.S. lost climate credibility as a leader to control global warming. The rest of the world has not been able to rely on the U.S. as a guiding force in climate change policy. What would Buddha do? He would say, it's not too late for leaders to take action to guide us to a better, greener world. Last week, our President Biden hosted a virtual World Climate Summit over to focus on the existential threat of climate change. Biden made a U.S. pledge to cut greenhouse gas emissions 50% by 2030, with net zero emissions by 2050. We have stepped up. Now, as a nation, what we need to do is pass laws through Congress cementing our efforts to control greenhouse gas emissions. Some of this can be seen in the infrastructure bill, focused not only on roads and bridges, but federal spending on specific climate-friendly renewable energy products. The rest of the world is watching, and one provision of this bill which will change the fate of energy economy and how the rest of the world sees our commitment to climate change. A mandate by law for clean electricity standard calls for an 80% of electricity generated in the U.S. to come from zero carbon sources by 2030. This language, written into law, will be brought to the international table, convincing the world of one of the spokes on the wheel of Buddhist teaching, that of right action, on the wheel of morality. This will elevate the United States as a true leader in developing international policy to stop the overheating of our planet. I know this talk was a bit heavy, but our suffering depends on our optimism for the future. Personally, I am optimistic. Why? Because environmental inconveniences aside, I could not be prouder of my daughter and her graduating senior class. They are so much smarter and engaged in their learning than I, or most of us boomers, ever were. Reflectively, looking over these past 18 years, I can't help to think our future does have hope. Namo Amida Butsu, and thank you.
The gatha for today is Amida's Smile, and this is followed by the Nembutsu.
Amida smile, a dream.
Namo Amida. Namo Amida. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida. Namo Amida Butsu. Peace is not achieved through violence, but through understanding and compassion. Thank you very much for attending this virtual Dharma service today, and will please join us if you can next week at the same time. Thank you and take care.